Today, this session is about challenging limits. To present this, I am Guruge, working as a senior architect in quality engineering at Cisco Labs. So, the topic I wanted to keep it quite open. Obviously, you will know since this is I am presenting on the process and the QE discipline on this dev day, and I am coming from a QE background, that this session will be on QA. But what actually I'm going to talk about today, it's challenging our limits in when it comes to test automation. My main message from this session is basically for us to think. Fortunately, the previous sessions that was done in the morning by Dave as well as Peter went in the same line. I mean, your ability to think and innovate things which will help. So here we'll look at some of those stuff that we've done earlier. So coming to the agenda, I'll touch upon how the industry evolved, especially on the test automation, and then some of the key challenges, typical challenges that we face day to day, few of them how we can overcome with the case studies, and I'll summarize what we have to take away. This gentleman was talked in the morning as well. He's none other than Albert Einstein, who developed the theory of relativity. There were questions whether he was right or wrong, but I mean, he was one of the genius people we had in 20th century. And two of the quotes that he given, one is, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world, and all there ever will be to know and understand. So what we know today and what we understand from the education and whatever the sources is limited to what we have now. But if you imagine out of that, I mean, there's a whole lot to learn. So that was the same theme I think Dave touched upon as well. And he says we cannot solve our problems with same thinking that we used to create them. Again, encouraging us to think differently. So with that quotes in mind, let's proceed to the technical part of the presentation. Let's look at the software development landscape today. And if you take, I mean, even Chandan was presented earlier, the only thing that is constant in the software development industry is the constant thing is change. When I started doing my degree, and when I started my career about 15 years back, I mean, we learned about development. I mean, the development methodology that we learned is waterfall, where you had defined stages of requirement analysis, design, implementation, testing, and it goes on. And these were, I mean, the projects that we did those days had, we'll say, 3 months, 6 months deliveries, where the requirements were gathered, and the customer, when receives it, it has taken a long time. So that's how the software development happened those days. And if you take the particular technology or tools that we've used, most of them were commercial tools or proprietary tools. When it comes to testing as well, there were tools like QTP, Windrunner, Silk Test, those kind of tools. And the development, I mean, the programming design happened on object orientation concepts. I mean, it suited at that point because when you're defining larger systems, having OOP concepts, because OOP encourages reusability and more structured manner. So the development happened with the OOP, even now OOP being used. But and then the other thing is the architecture. The applications were developed with monolithic architecture, lot of code and lot of functionality, and you could do that because I mean, you have a defined timeline. You know, in 6 months down the line, you might be delivering this. So you can plan, because when you do monolithic applications, if you, I mean, that's less overhead if you have the proper structure. But this is what we've had probably a decade ago. Nowadays, we have agile. So even in the previous presentation, when they asked how many of us use agile, I mean, most of the people raise their hands, right? So the development methodology that we use today is agile. Whether the practices are performed as it is mentioned in the manifesto is, I mean, that could be debatable, but we follow some of the practices at least to Scrum and Kanban. And open source, I mean, earlier days we had proprietary software, but nowadays, I mean, there are a lot of open source tools and technologies available, and there's you have many to pick and choose. And we talk about microservices architecture compared to monolithic architecture, because when it comes to microservices architecture, I mean, you develop microsystems. I mean, when you have shorter development life cycles like short agile sprints, as well as small teams, I mean, that supports that kind of development, as well as, I mean, nowadays all this development happens, I mean, all these changes happens to support the end user feedback. So if basically looking at the customer, some agile supports their getting their feedback, and even microservices, I mean, if you can deliver some of the services to the customer upfront, as well as if there's a failure on a particular area, still the other microservices can handle. So with those deliveries, I mean, the things have changed. And apart from the object orientation programming, now we talk about functional programming, where we talk about more efficiency and more functional output, and nowadays another trend is data analytics. So for these things, functional programming suits better than OOP. So the things have, the landscape of the technologies that is used in software industry has changed quite a bit. So how this has impacted on the test automation? Let's take a look. Test automation, when I started my career, I mean, that was something nice to have, because when you have a delivery, you have to deliver that feature, and probably we are running with the waterfall development methodology, and the regression cycles before the final delivery might be, I mean, you have 3 releases. So regression testing is not something critical to be automated. But if you take today, we have agile development. Every 2 weeks, you are getting a feature, you test it, and there's a lot of integration and regression testing requirement. And if you take, it goes to the extent, I mean, when a user story is done, in the definition of done, you define automation as a must. I mean, if the automation is for that particular user story not done, the user story is not complete. So it has come to that level that automation is a mandatory thing in today's world. And those days, as I mentioned earlier, the lot of tools were commercial, like Silk Test, Windrunner, QTP. There were a lot of tools. I mean, there are few tools, but all were commercial. But nowadays, if you take, there are a lot of open source tools available. If you take UI automation, Selenium, Protractor, when it comes to API, REST assured, Postman, there are a lot of options, and even for mobile testing, Appium. So there are a lot of tools come in open source arena. And those days, when we talk about automation, they say don't do automation on an unstable product, because I mean, automation was done as separate projects. Even I can remember we provide, I mean, I worked for a service company at that time, and we were preparing project proposals for the customers. We cost tooling cost we present to them, if we have automation engineers on the team, those are, rated at a higher price. And so they have the particular customer who comes to us has to pay a premium price, and we show after 3 months down the line you will cross over, that will be your breaking point. After that you will have a benefit. So those kind of things were there because they were paying a price, and for this higher price, if you have to have a rework, if your application getting changed and if your automation has to be reworked, then it's additional cost. So they didn't want to have that rework. But today, within the 2-week sprint, you have to complete your automation. So it's a parallel development. You can't wait till the developer completes the feature. First you have to at least do some groundwork. If it's a UI test, you might be developing your page objects and have them ready. So once the development is complete, you can put the finishing touches and run your automation. So it has grown into that level. And those days, test automation engineers was few number of people who have special skills. But today it's not the case. In the agile development, it's a basic skill. Chandan also touched upon this earlier. About 5 to 10 years back, you could, in the QA industry, you could survive without the technical skills or the automation skills. But today, it's a basic skill that all QAs should have. So with these changes, so automation has grown a quite important aspect of our product development. So to make an automation success, what are the things? To call out an automation project or automation approach is a success, how do we measure it? It should be effective. You should be able to gain good coverage on the test, as well as it should be efficient, it should be stable. So these are the success of automation. To get that, you have 3 factors to consider. First thing is you have to have the right tool. There are a lot of tools to select from. There could be commercial tools, open source tools, quite a few options, but you have to take the right approach, as well as right tool, as well as the people. Here from the people point of view, what I mentioned here is the skill. You need to have the proper skill, which has become a basic skill for today. And what I've seen from the recent past is actually the QA industry and the QA people have upskilled their talents. So I see a lot of technical people in the QA arena today. And the other major part is approach. How you approach your automation? How you change your strategy to achieve a better coverage? So that's a key factor. And in the rest of the sessions, I'll touch upon this area in a deeper manner. Okay, now we discuss about what importance of automation and the success of it. And some of the barriers that we see day to day is these things. What the nature of what is being tested. When we report metrics on the automation, the 3 key things that we report: number of test cases we have, number of automatable test cases, and out of the automatable, how much is automated. So this automatable comes into play because of the nature of the testing. We call it out, this cannot be automated. So that's a barrier in achieving a higher level of automation. Sometimes tool limitation. The particular testing that we need to do might not be directly available from particular tool, or the tools available, or sometimes the tool is there, it could be at a higher cost, so you can't afford it. Third factor is obviously the cost. There are tools available, but your budget cannot afford to have that. So here I had a different picture onto these barriers, because this is about chaining an elephant. You might know the story. For the benefit of the people who don't know, I'll briefly touch upon this. if you take a grown elephant, it has about 6,000 kilos of weight, 3 meters high, is a very strong animal. And if you see the chain that is being holding that particular elephant, it has the strength to break it, but it doesn't. Why is that? The elephant is being chained at the younger age. When the elephant is small, they keep him with a chain, and at that time the elephant tries to break, but it can't. It doesn't have the enough strength to break it, and it hurts. And what happens is, over the time, the elephant learns this is something that cannot be broken. So after growing up, still the same chain is there. He can break it, but he doesn't. I mean, that's where what we learn and is impacting how we can improve. So let's look at some of these barriers and see how we can use cases where we have successfully overcome them. Okay, the first case study. In our company, I mean, we have a point of sale POS application software which is developed for restaurants. Now, in this POS software, since it's on a restaurant, I mean, one of the major functionality is printing. When a person goes to the restaurant, he makes an order. I mean, he might order some items, and when the order is placed, there's a printer in the kitchen that the order has to be sent to kitchen for the chef to make the right order. There's a printer, so he checks how this what is the order from that printer, and once the order is completed, when the customer pays it, he needs to be issued another receipt saying this is your order. So this is a major functionality. But if you take this verification, this you have to print and check. So in general terms, you might call this is not something automatable, because the nature of testing is not something that is known in the general automation that we do. Let's understand the problem better. The verifications that we need to do are twofold. One is the content verification. If you place order, the order has to have the correct items and the correct, if you print a bill, it has to have the right amounts, tax and all that. So that's one thing, the content. Second is the look and feel, how it is being printed. So these are the two aspects that we need to automate. And the printer type. I mean, the printer that in this particular scenario we have is a network printer. So it works on the TCP layer, and so basically connecting a socket, you can listen to it. And so what we can do is we can create a socket. Socket is basically a IP and a port. So in this case, the POS software writes to that particular port, and if you can create a socket and send they make the POS software to send the details to that one, you can automate it. So let's see how this was done. So we configure the POS software to write to consider the test machine, the machine that we run the automation, consider that as the printer. If you take the network, the particular test machine or the particular test, the machine that we run the test, if we give that IP of that particular machine to the POS software to consider that as a feature, printer, and we create a socket in that particular test machine and make a connection. Then when the printing happens, the particular POS software, when you place the order, it sends out those details into that socket, and you can grab that information. But it goes with control data as well, so we can cleanse the data and then we can verify it. So these are some of the, this you might not be able to apply the same thing in your respective companies, but the idea could be something that you can take up. So that's why I have how this is being done. So this is at the configuration level. The particular software, the POS software has a configuration in the CouchDB. So from the CouchDB we check, this is the primary printer. So which is the printer which prints the order, which is order receipts for the customer. And we check that the ID of that one, and if it's the ID of the local printer, the machine, here we get the network IP address of the particular automation machine, and if it's equal then we don't have to do anything, but if it's not, then we log into the POS software, and from admin panel we set the POS to configure the printer IP as our test machine's IP. Then at the particular test machine we create a socket and make a socket connection, and this printer switch is for flag to, if we start a printer, if you set that flag to on, it will start listening to this particular socket and read the content. So once that content is read as into a string buffer, then what we do is we basically clean that control data and get the cleaned content. So this is how you clean it. The control data is nothing other than, when you have the print, there could be bolding, control signals to bold. This is a printer, right? So if you want to bold something, there's control keys patterns, and if it's font sizes and all that. So these control signals, since we are going to validate the content of the receipt, we have to remove. So in this particular method, we cleanse those data and take the content out into a string. So when it comes to a test, what we have here is we have the cleansed data, and in this one, so we are validating. I've taken only some parts of the methods. Here we are validating the order number, gross sales, tip amount. So in this way, majority, I mentioned about two parts of this verification. One is the content. The content verification is taken care of. So if you place the order to a kitchen printer or a printer at the customer front, that verification is done. But when it comes to printing the layouts and all that, but still it will be a manual task. But the thing that we thought as a barrier to achieve a higher coverage has been overcome. Only thing that we've done different is we've looked at the problem in a deeper manner and try to understand the solution. We'll take the second one, this on the tool limitation. So this is AS400 terminal. So you might have seen some of the Rumba terminals and all that. Now if you take the large enterprises, legacy systems still runs on, lot of companies runs on these IBM series and terminals. So if you take this kind of for this kind of a tool application to be automated, you might have commercial tools like there are quite a lot of tools. Some of the tools like QTP supports, but you have to pay for it. But in this case, what the team looked at, whether there are any options. So when we looked at this IBM series has two terminal types, 5250 and 3270. These are the terminal types, and when we further analyzed, there were Java libraries or Java libraries for the terminal emulators, which is TN5250 and TN3270. And these libraries provides us to telnet to that particular application and perform actions. And the user, how user works on these sessions, the terminals is basically they send, type keys, or they have functions to perform. So if I go back to this one, you can type something, or there are functions that you can. Here it says F3 is for exit, F5 is for refresh, likewise. So those are the main functions, because in terminals you work through the keyboard. So the solution that we've come up with is, if you take this particular screen, you can see at the right bottom corner, there's a number. That's basically the cursor position. It's in the 11th row, 3rd column. So it's the row and column that is indicated there. So using this information, you can identify the particular field. So what we've done is use this information and identify the page object similar structure for our automation. So this is one of the page. So it has, we need to identify these fields. So group name field, the first character is on the 4th row, 24th column. Then the date field starts on the 10th row, 6th column. Likewise, we identified the first starting character of that particular field, and the others are the function keys. It could be F6, F7, or enter key, backspace, likewise. So these things defined in the framework, so we can use it at the functions. So when it comes to the particular screen, we have two functions. Those are basically the sending keys, send text and send keys. So if you want to type something, you can use a send key, and what we do is we provide those the input, the input variable and the particular cursor position. So it goes to that particular position and perform that action. So this is, I'm not sure how many of us have tried this kind of open source solution, because people don't look into these things. Things might not have been there in the past, but as of now, with these open source developments, there are a lot of options like this. Third one is the cost factor. That's a major factor that comes into play. In this one, the particular example that I'm going to take is mobile device farms. Now we talk about mobile development these days. Unlike in web development, even web development you have different browsers to be certified, but native mobile applications, there are a lot of when it comes to testing, you need to test on different devices, iOS, Android, and OS wise, and because of different resolutions, different devices, as well as even if you take Android, there are multiple versions. So there are a lot of combinations. So if you are to certify a particular application on a mobile application, then you will have to test on multiple devices. And to test it better, you might test it on a real device, physical device, because that's where you can get, rather than testing on emulator, that's a better testing approach, because you can take the real feeling of it. But the thing is, if we'll say you have in this case, the problem is, you have teams spread across geographies. You have a team here in Sri Lanka and another part of the team in US. So if you have to buy devices, you might have to buy devices here as well as there. So that's not a viable option. Then you might need to run your automation on this particular device farm. And sometimes, you might want to run your same automation code on multiple devices at the same time as well. So for this one, there are obviously commercial solutions like AWS Device Farm, Source Labs, and Perfecto. There are many options, but the thing is, it costs you the physical device price as well as the maintenance cost. And there's another open source project, but as of now, smaller work has been done on this particular open source project. It's called the OpenSTF. This supports Android as of now, which is, the setting up is a bit of a straightforward, and this supports running automation as well. Let me see whether I can. Yes. So this is the particular application that I've hosted in my machine. So I've connected my phone here. So if I want to run this, so I can give the gestures, and so basically I can control it from here. And if I do something here as well, it will it's connected, and then I can easily control it. So this is what a device farm will provide for you as well. So if you hosted this on a public IP, within the network, the people from your other location also should be able to access it. Now the other problem is we want to run our automation. So here I have installed a sample app which is a very simple app that is for demonstration purposes, and let me take the automation code here. Okay. So you have to have minor configurations. One is here I've hosted the particular application on the local host on the port 7100, and you can generate access key from that particular application. So I've generated that. So once you've done that, the rest of the stuff is basically Appium setup. You have to set up the desired capabilities, give the package and all that. So here I've done a simple test. So let me so it runs on my machine, and here, since I had to connect only one machine, let me see. In this one, since I had only one, I've connected only that device, but it has the provision now. If I wanted to have multiple devices at the data provider, I could have provided it and run on multiple devices at the same time as well. So let's go back to the presentation. So these, we looked at few limitations. One is the nature of testing, the tool limitations, and the cost. So if you are willing to research and see what is out there in the market, and if you want to imagine a solution, then there are options. So this is what I want to give as the message. And if you take today's the emerging trends, we talk about blockchain and data analytics with the machine learning and all that, and IoT and cloud computing. So these are new things as well as quite challenging. It's quite different to the web testing or the manual testing that we've done about a decade ago. There are different complexities. Okay, if you take, for example, if you take data analytics, those are machine learning, and you don't have the specific, when you do a predictive analysis from that, after the particular processing, the output value that you get is not a specific value. We'll say you do a machine learning to predict the students' scores for a particular subject. So depending on the past data, with the algorithm it might suggest a value, and that value is not a definite value, because I mean there's a tolerance level as well in these algorithms. I mean it's so in that case, how you test that? So there are different complexities when it comes to IoT devices. I mean it's not only the particular application testing. I mean there are hardware testing, lot of things to consider. So the testing scope is getting challenging, and you need to be open-minded and willing to go out of your boundaries to successful in this type of world. So what you have to be doing, this was mentioned in the morning sessions as well. Number one is you have to analyze the situation. In the particular use cases that I've taken, I mean if you take it lightly, I mean if you just look at the question, it's something impossible. But if you really look at in the particular first example, the post example, how the printer works and whether there's opportunity for you to improve, there was. And even for the AS400 terminal, if you look at how it is configured, that particular simple cursor location, that gave you an idea to identify the objects and come up with a solution. So the solution is not a technically very challenging one, but it's a simple solution, but you have to analyze it properly and be creative. You don't have to follow the, I mean you should be willing to unlearn and be creative and try new things. And the other thing is stay up to date. Now about a year ago, I mean some of these technologies would not have been there, but there are new things in the market. So you have to always keep yourself up to date. So with this I would like to conclude. So actually if you take, when it comes to test automation or anything, sky is not the limit. It's actually your mind. If you think that I mean you can't go beyond that, you won't be able to, like the elephant that was chained. So with that I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.